We are live.
Live.
Boundaries are
Boundless Sexiness.
No, it's boundaries equal boundless sexiness.
That's right.
So we're gonna be talking about this today, y'all. So
because boundaries are sexy.
I'm Brandon Yeager, Tah Whitty. Welcome, Tah Whitty, my good friend.
Thank you, brother. It's great to be here, man. Great to be here.
We're gonna have fun.
We are having fun already.
Abso-freaking-lutely. So let's talk about boundaries a little bit. There's been a lot of boundaries tested in our environment recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some boundaries that have been challenging since this environmental shift for you, Tah?
Well, boundaries for me in particular.
Yeah. Let's go personal.
Yeah, man. My boundaries of choice. Boundaries have been challenged. Definitely, my boundaries to choose what I want to choose, to be where I want to be, to say the things that I want to say. These things have all been challenged, and I'm watching the people around me and my clients and my friends have very similar challenges in their boundaries. And there are many people who don't know what boundaries are, and so when someone pushes against my boundaries, I have to push back to make sure my boundaries are upheld. And so my boundaries of where I'd like to go, who can come see me, who will come see me, who will stay in touch with me, my boundaries around my family and friends, all of these things have been challenged.
Nice. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll go into relationships. So, Deb and I, we've had some boundaries. We've had some boundaries tested and some new boundaries defined specifically during the last, say, 2-3 months, with a lot of this stuff going on. And I think a lot of people don't realize how unconscious they are and to their boundaries. And so you may be watching this and you think, where are my boundaries? Where are they with my relationship, my job, my health, my wellness, my fitness? And so, and I want to talk about that. Let's talk about relationship boundaries, because I'm going to go into it in business in a little bit, but in the context of like sales or pushing up against clients' boundaries, as far as stretching their boundaries, as far as helping them break through, stretch through some things that they're a little bit in the comfort zone,
Right. So, so I think it's important for us to talk about what boundaries are. And
sure.
For me, boundaries are like a force field, and they are limits going in and limits coming in and limits going out. These are the things that protect us. These are the things that allow things in. It's kind of like if I had a screen in front of my window. A screen is a boundary that lets bugs in, right? It lets air in, but it doesn't let the bugs in. So it has kind of a filter. So when you set up boundaries, it's how far can you let things in and how far can you let things out. And boundaries apply for your love life, for your sex life, for your business life, for your friendships, for your relationships with your children. These are really important things to set up. And I think they can be pretty sexy when a person knows how to exhibit and express their boundaries, and in both directions. If a person knows how to expand their boundaries, to allow them themselves to expand, and then kind of contract to protect themselves if they need protection, or to not have things happen to them that they just don't want to be participating in. So I think that boundaries are really important for all of us to have and express, and it's a part of sovereignty. And a big part of where I work, and I know where you work, Brandon, is in showing people how to be sovereign over their lives, over their businesses, over their relationships, over their interactions with other human beings.
Boundaries are sexy when you enforce them. So,
oh man, it's so sexy.
What's funny is when you don't enforce it, how painful it is. Mm-hmm. So we just recently, I was talking with a client friend, and she was needing to get some stuff off, and she wasn't speaking about this relationship specifically about a client, but it was also like it had blurred lines between the boundary client and the friend relationship.
Right.
There was not a very clearly defined boundary of, where are we in this relationship? What are we doing? How is this working? And I said, the only way to go over there and straighten this out is to speak about what you're not speaking about, to say what you need to say and get it off your chest by laying down that boundary. And so she did. She went over there and did it. And then she was like, oh my gosh, it felt so amazing. She goes, I'm a boundary setter. I'm a boundary setter. It was hilarious.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's important. It's an empowering thing to have sovereignty over yourself. It's an empowering thing to have sovereignty over your body, to be able to do what you want. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're shirtless on this broadcast, because I mean, listen, it's a boundary. I know how comfortable I am with expressing myself and being able to be seen. And one of the things that I've been working with people on recently in their boundaries is asking them a question: how do you feel with no clothes on? And some people feel safe because we have been programmed as societies of people that our human bodies, the natural human body, is something that is indecent. And so we have been taught to put a boundary around ourselves to protect other people from seeing our nakedness. And that is a boundary in and of itself. So, I mean, I think that it's a real powerful thing when a person can step up and express their boundaries. And the more you can peel back, the more you can see another person, the more you can be intimate on all different levels. And I'm about being intimate with my people as far as my family, my friends, the people I do business with. I want people to know me. And that doesn't mean carnal knowledge, and intimacy does not mean sexuality. It means an intricate connection. And the more people can get in closer and see who you are and how you are, all the guard is down. Then you can get to the real work. Then you can get to the deep, deep work.
I love that.
Yeah. So
I want to talk about intimacy and define what intimacy is when we speak about this and the boundary of that. Because we were talking, I kind of call it, it's really the same thing, but I call it ultimate rapport, and this deep core rapport that we have to establish in order to even create that vulnerable container where people feel safe, where they can take off their shirt and feel comfortable. Should I put my pants back on?
No. Let it swing, bro. It's getting, nobody can see except you. And whoever else is there. So, I mean, rapport, for me, rapport is a huge part of intimacy. Rapport is the volley. It's the back and forth of connection. So when I'm working with people and the way I work with my life, there's something that I call the roadmap to intimacy. And it starts off with you being able to physically tolerate your body in a circumstance, with a person, in a place, or whatever, to be able to physically tolerate yourself. Once you can tolerate yourself, you can kind of accept yourself in that situation and kind of settle. And then you can ask yourself, do I feel safe with this such situation, this person, these people, these things? And then you can open up the gate for vulnerability. And vulnerability is an expression of your truths. And that is the expression of your truth in how you look and how you express yourself, the cadence of your voice, the sound of your voice, your thoughts, your ideas, to express that. So rapport comes in when somebody else volleys vulnerability and they give you a truth, and you have a back and forth volley of truths. That is connection. And when you start to get that connection below the surface, you start to get deep and you start to get an interwoven volley of rapport. That is intimacy, as far as I'm concerned. And you can be intimate with a person. You can be intimate with your objects. You can be intimate with your car. You could be intimate with your business and the systems. You could really interweave yourself into a system. Once you know the system and the system is familiar with you, there is an intimacy. There's a rapport that goes back and forth. And that's where intimacy lies. And that is where you find your boundaries. How far are you willing to go to allow somebody to be intimate with you? How much intimacy are you willing to let people in for? So when it comes to a relationship with a person who you consider a life partner or a sex partner or whatever, or your wife or your husband or whatever that is, you have certain boundaries on how a person can touch you. You know, you allow it. Hey, listen, I like to be touched. If somebody's touching you like this, and you prefer to be touched like this, right? It's like, hey, listen, I know you are touching me and you want to touch me. That's not my preference on how I want to be touched. So I want you to stop touching me that way and touch me like this, because that's how I want to be touched.
To communicate
right?
that.
Yeah, and to communicate that, that's setting a boundary. That's setting a situation up. And these are the same type of situations you can set up for your business. And when you're having a meeting, if somebody starts to lurch, to lean in and get really excited, and you have something that triggers in your body where you have a hard time actually managing that, you could say, hey, listen, I'm having a challenging time with this because of my own thing. There is some threat feelings coming up in my body, and I need you to just move back a little bit so that my nervous system calms down, so that I can actually interact with you because I'm not in a position. That's setting a boundary. And when you do that type of boundary setting, you could let the other person know, so that if they don't, if they want to expand their boundary into your situation and they don't want to participate otherwise, they can make a choice to leave. And that's them expressing their boundaries and staying in their space. So having a volley back and forth is really, really important when you're creating an intimate situation, and letting people know where you are. Hey, listen, I prefer this. All right, cool. Well, I prefer this. Well, either way, we're going to meet in the mid ground somewhere and understand on things, or we can part ways. And that is a huge part of boundaries in all aspects of my life and all the things that I do.
I like how you explain that. And I look at it also as like layers, right? It's almost like an onion. You're pulling back layers and you're getting deeper and deeper. And sometimes clients, some people, for many, it's like they'll stay at, they're very sheltered. They've got a lot of unconscious stuff. There's a belief around being vulnerable. And so this boundary is they're not going to open up at all. And so I found that it can take some time to build that trust and back and forth with that volley for rapport.
Yep.
You begin to start that core of ultimate rapport, that intimacy, to be able to, especially in the context of coaching, let's say you don't have ultimate rapport. If your client doesn't trust you, if there isn't an intimate relationship, they are not going to, change and take on this massive transformational shift.
Not at all. And it's because their physiology may not feel safe. And that's a huge part of it. We get into a lot of things around mental processes. If a person's physiology, if their body does not trust you, it is going to provide its own boundary. And that is part of the fight or flight response.
Totally.
And when a person does not perceive safety, and that's why it's tolerance, acceptance, safety, vulnerability, connection, intimacy. That's it. It's
I like how you break that down.
You can apply it, man. You can take it and run with it. You can apply it to everything, every circumstance. Use it.
I think I used that in the last training, not the last one, but probably like sometime in June. I think we talked about it. I like how you broke it down.
I'm telling you, man, it's been flawless, man. It came to me one day. I was like, man, let me see what. And it just started coming in, and I was like, let me write this shit down. And it's been flawless. Every time, every person, if you are not in this position to physically tolerate yourself, if your body says no, intimacy is not happening. And so being able to get yourself into a space where you can tolerate yourself there, accept yourself in a space of awareness. If you're not aware, you're oblivious to it, you're not going to connect regardless. And you may be wondering, why am I not connecting? Because your body may be saying no. So can you get another person on board to actually get you into a space where your body down regulates? That's where it's important. And if you are the person who's the guide, who's the leader, who's the person who's guiding a person into that space, how can you get another person's body to respond and down regulate? Can you slow your breathing down? If you see a person getting nervous and short breath, can you kind of lean back? Because one human body breathing deeply allows another human body to know that it's not breathing really fast and leaning in for the attack. So when you lean back on that, the physiology recognizes it, and it can. And I'm going to give something to all of y'all. I'm going to tell y'all all something. If you ever want to rock a stage, the first thing that you do when you get in front of that microphone or in front of that crowd, you stand there and you just look at everybody for a couple of seconds after they introduce you, and then stop, and then take a nice deep breath. And watch, and then do it again. And then watch as all the bodies in the room start to align. They will all align with you. And so the bodies start to tolerate you. They start to feel accepted. They start to feel safe. And that's when you start to lean into it. And when you lean into it, you start to open up in your space of safety, because now you've breathed, they've breathed, your bodies are in cahoots. Then you open up your vulnerability and you tell your story. And that's where the connection starts to happen. People will come up to you after you get off that stage, and they'll want to talk to you because their bodies are synchronized with yours. Really, really important in that rapport space, in that connection space where you're looking to make intimacy.
Hey, we're talking about, if you're just jumping on, we're talking about boundaries.
Boundaries are sex.
And how sexy they are. Let's talk about, for the reason, the purpose of like why boundaries are so difficult for some. Mm-hmm. Some may be watching this and you may say, it's really hard to set boundaries. It's really difficult. And the belief around it, or how they were raised, right? Their upbringing the environment they were around, maybe boundaries were loose in their environment. And so they didn't know how to install those because parents didn't, or, brothers didn't, whatever, siblings, uncles, aunts. And so let's talk about that challenge that some may have. You may be watching this saying, I really do have a challenge around boundaries. I think many do, because once you enforce them with someone else, what's interesting is the universe will provide and ask you to see if you're willing to enforce them in yourself. And you'll either step right over your own boundary or someone else will when you finally start realizing boundaries are that important. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, when you consider a boundary is like a balloon, it can expand. And when you say boundaries are loose, it's kind of like they're expanded boundaries. So they allow a lot of things in. And so when you can kind of have control over the contraction of the boundary, you can expand it when you want, and you can contract it. And I think that there's a benefit to people who have had quote unquote loose boundaries as children, because they can see the inside of a bigger bubble than people who had really constricted boundaries all their lives. So they can actually pull that in. And when they pull that in and start to feel the comfort of saying no, right? No is the first word with boundaries. No, I'm just not going to do it. Tune into your body, see when it's saying no, and then actually get somebody on board with you. Hey, I want to say no. Can you help me say no? Yeah. That's actually building a boundary by bringing community in it. We didn't get loose boundaries by ourselves. Right? We learned it from watching the people around us. So if we want to get tighter boundaries or closer boundaries, we bring people in that we tolerate, accept, feel safe with, can be vulnerable with, we can connect with, and we're already intimate with. So when we bring those people in and be like, listen, I have an issue with saying no. So if you see me in a space and I lean in and I'm like, I'm having a hard time saying no, come support me on it. Can you do that? And you build around that. It's a really interesting space to see people who have had these expanded boundary zones bring it in and really rock that space, because they know all of the inside of a big, big bubble. So they start to bring it in, and it's really a great space for people to explore because they have more of a perspective of a lot of stuff. So
would you say it's more challenging to go from if you were raised and it was rigid, right? Boundaries were super rigid and you're tight, versus say loose boundaries? Which one do you think? I mean, everyone's different, of course. Which one do you think is more challenging to expand upon and relearn, reprogram, based on that?
So it really depends on how polarized they are. And this is, our society has a lot of polarities. We have conservatives and then we have liberals, right? So right. And so especially in the United States, right, we have conservatives and liberals, and then there's the space in between. And the space in between is like, so you have polarity A and polarity B. And then there's the space in between, and I call that the no-larity space. There's no-larity, right? And that's where all the magic is. It's in the no-larity space. So when you are extremely polarized, it can be challenging from either side. The thing is to get yourself into the no-larity and find people who are in that space and kind of see if you can glue yourself on, or kind of, connect with a person who can ride in that space, and actually ask them, hey, listen, can I follow and see how you do your boundaries so I can learn from you? Because we learn from watching other people. We learn from being around other people energetically, psychologically, physiologically. We learn habits. It's just it's like an accent, right? And my accent is a boundary from where I am in New York. It's a boundary of how my body expresses vowels and consonants. My language, my accent is a boundary situation. It's a habit. And when you look at boundaries as a habit situation, some people have this big habit and some people have this tight habit. And so when you can start to expand that, and then that's when you bring in the neuroplasticity situation. And that's where you hire Deb and Brandon to get your NLP situation together, right? Because that's rocking the neuroplasticity area. When you look at that habit space, it's kind of challenging on how far you're polarized. But the thing that I've seen is that people who are really constricted have a hard time expanding, and people who are really expanded have a hard time bringing it in, because it starts to become normalized. And when we have something that becomes normalized, it becomes a neurological pattern. And that is where the issue is. So I haven't really found one or the other that's more difficult unless a person is extremely polarized. And so I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, in self-awareness, they have to realize at first that they are not, they don't have boundaries, or that they're flexible in their boundaries, or that they need to set boundaries.
Yeah, man.
I love that. So so what are some ideas people need to start obviously saying no? And there's, it's interesting is when I started really realizing people were stepping over my own boundaries, it was a feeling that I got, and then it would be this resentment. So what's some things that people can do from your perspective that can begin to start saying, hey, it's time that I start stepping into my power, speaking my truth, and actually saying, hey, you know what? This person's stepping over my boundaries.
Right.
What would that look like? Sound
Right.
like?
And so I before I even dive into that, there's something that you said around. We could start by saying no. And so the people who have the expanded boundary, I don't like this. Loose is a term. I like expanded. People have really wide boundaries. And so those are the people who tend to say yes to everything and allow everything in. Those are the people who benefit from starting to ease in with nah. No, right? The people who are contracted, they usually say no to everything. Oh, no, I'm not going out. No, I don't. You can't have this. No, they can start saying yes. And the first person that people can start saying no and yes to is the self. Yes, I can. Yes, I can go out. I can spend this money. I can have this wonderful sex. I can take my shirt off on a Facebook Live, right? Saying yes, saying yes to yourself. If you are a person that has boundaries that are restrictive, that you've been taught to be really, really conservative in your situations, expand, just explore. You can always go back to saying no. And the people who are always saying yes, just, you know what? They want to go out and I don't want to go. No, I'm just not doing it tonight. And if it really rocks you and you need to go back to saying yes, guess what you can do? You can always go back to saying yes. So, but depending on where you've been polarized, right? If you are having issues with that, you could say yes or no. But the first person it starts with is yourself. That person in the mirror is really, really, really important to speak to on that yes and no, in that yes and no context. So that's where I would start off. Another thing is most people who have boundary issues don't recognize it as a boundary issue. So if you're looking to explore this, could you ask your friends, could you ask the people that know you, hey, do you see me having expanded or loose boundaries or no boundaries at all? Or do you see me being a very rigid person who has very tight and constricted boundaries? It's not that we don't have boundaries, it's just that they're different. And so if we see things if another person's perspective can come in and help us to see ourselves in a light, in a light of another perspective, it's really important. And I think that's another part of intimacy is honoring. That's that validity of somebody else's truth. It may not be true for me. I've had people say, man, you're a bit rigid. And I'm like, me? Me? Can you tell me how? And there are plenty of blind spots that I have where I'm very rigid about things. And then most of the other time I'm really loose. Like I like when people touch me. I love to be touched, man. Come touch me, please. Like caress my, hug me, touch me. I love to be touched. And so Cole will be like, I'll be like, man, I have great boundaries. And she'll be like, you don't have any physical boundaries. And so I like to be touched. This is what I like to be touched. But if somebody now I used to be in a place where people would touch me that I didn't like it. And so since I was letting other people touch me, I would let them touch me and I didn't like it. And so I've since Cole brought that up to my attention, I have been in this space where I've been honoring myself. If a person touches me in a way that I don't like, or if somebody's touching me and I don't like, I don't want them touching me, I say, hey, can you please take your hands off me? And so it's not in a rude way or anything, but it's really starting to recognize that. So asking other people outside of yourself, hey, do you see any place in my life where I'm not expressing boundaries? And this, I think, is an important space for people who are business leaders, who are having people who have troubles in an office situation or troubles on a team situation. Let's talk about boundaries. Do you see anybody in here who, all right, let's all go around and ask. Do you see any?
Ask another way would be, hey, give me some feedback. I think that's I'm always asking for feedback because it's like, hey, where am I unconscious on something that, like you said earlier, let me know if I'm overstepping a boundary and you're not speaking up. So sometimes it's almost like you can tell you're breaking someone's boundary or you're definitely bumping up against it. Yeah. And you almost have to ask them, hey, give me some feedback. How are you doing on things? That's something that I've been definitely more conscious of and helping others out with. It's funny, Deb and Cole, they're so much alike. It's like they don't want to be touched. And I mean, for the most part, I mean, Deb likes to be touched, but it's like there's a certain time. So I've gotten more aware of, right time, right place.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's a boundary. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely a boundary. It's like, oh, she's in her stuff. Okay. All right. I won't touch you now. 5 minutes. Can I come back in 5?
Listen, and the funny thing is, people will watch Cole and they'll assume that because I like to be touched and I like to hug people, that Cole is the same way. And they'll walk over to her and she'll be like, like the hand comes out. It's so funny. They'll be like, and she'll be like, that guy. It's hysterical. But Cole's boundaries are awesome, man. Like I watch her, I'm inspired by her boundaries.
She does have amazing boundaries.
She does, man. And I've learned how to say no in different ways from interacting with Cole. I've learned, especially when it comes to my family and my mom. I've learned how to see the boundaries that come up with me around my feelings and my sensations. I have a lot of anger and protective mechanisms that come up with certain people in my life. And she'll tap me on the shoulder and she'll be like, hey, do you notice that you're closing off to this person? And I'll be like, what are you talking about? And then she'll get in front of me and she'll slow her breathing down so that I can actually perceive, because I'm probably so heightened that I don't even see it, and I can't, and my logic is offline. So she'll get in front of, and this is what we do. We volley with this, back and forth. I'll do the same thing for her, but I'm giving you an example of mine. She'll get in front of me and she'll slow her breathing down, and it'll cause me to slow my breathing down. And she'll be like, do you notice that you're getting a little rigid? And I'll be like, what are you talking about? And she'll stop and she'll touch my face and she'll be like, I'm just bringing something to your attention. Your jaw is really tight. And she'll be like, just feel your teeth right now. And then she'll be like, can you feel your shoulders hunching? And I'll be like, oh shit. Right. And so she'll be like, what's going on with you? And she'll be like, you're protecting from something. And I'm realizing that this is a physiological boundary that my body has set up from old paradigms. And so when you can have another person or people that can be on board with understanding when your physiology is coming online and providing a boundary, you can start to reprogram that neurologically to let your guard down if it's not necessary. And that doesn't mean your guard can't come back up. Your body knows how to get back into that. You've been doing it long enough. The guardian is always going to be there. Just reprogram it to kind of take the back seat if there's no threat. And
I think the tough thing for me and Deb, when she would, it would come across as rejection for me. And so that boundary was like when she would install it, and then she got really firm upholding it, because she's got pretty firm boundaries, and she's like cold, like they're 2 peas in a pod. I would be kind of hurt, and I was like, damn, like that boundary hurt. And I had expanded boundaries maybe in that area of touching and feeling and time, right place. And I had to really realize, like, okay, that's her boundary. I can appreciate it. It may feel bad. It may feel uncomfortable, and it hurt for like the first, I don't know. It was one of those things I had to go through a phase of like, okay, I got to reprogram. I can't just grab on her and touch her whenever I want. And now I'm more conscious of it. It still happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Those things, right? Because family goes right into the same thing with family. My gosh, my mom, we had expanded boundaries, and still working through those as well. But it's definitely something that is when you get a hold of it, you realize, this is why that is.
Well, I mean, a lot of the boundaries that I started to express with my mom, there were things that my mother would say to me that she wouldn't say to my brother and sister. And like she had this, her boundary, her output boundary for me, I believe, was a lot different than it was for my brother and sister. And so she would say things to me that would reduce me to tears in 30 seconds or less. Like she would fly in, my mother would fly in from another state and come to my house, and she'd walk through the door and she'd be like, why is all this stuff laid out over here? I'm come all the way from this place and you got boxes here. And it'll be like something just got delivered. And she would reduce me to tears. But her output, her bandwidth output to me she had no boundaries with that. So there was a point where I had to say to my mother, Mommy, I love you. And I'm your son. I'm not a child, and you will no longer speak to me in these fashions, or I am not going to I'm not going to volley with you. And so that changed our relationship. And she came to me later that night and she was like, I don't know why I'm like this with you. And it opened up a space for us to actually be able to have more of an intimate situation because we had a volley back and forth of vulnerability. And so sometimes when you are vulnerable, when you are setting boundaries, another person can actually receive that and see that they can't walk all over you anymore. And maybe that's what they've been kind of challenging the whole time, is to see if you would give them something to kind of meet them in the middle. And when you meet somebody in the middle, that is where connection happens. And that's where boundaries can start to open up and connect with each other. And you can meet people in spaces. But whenever you get pushed and another person just takes the pushback, one person has a boundary, has an expanded boundary. The other person has a contracted boundary. So it's not a fit. When both people are meeting in the middle, that's where the magic happens. And that's where the sexiness happens. And when we want to talk about sex is, the connection of and the creative force of humankind. And so it is not just about physical sex, two people having sex. It is about people collaborating with a masculine and feminine energy to create. And that is creating art, that is creating business, that is creating money, that is creating conversation, that is creating fun, that is sexual energy. That is why boundaries are sexy, because there's a push and pull. We can control those valves, that open it up and kind of close it up on one side, and we can kind of do these things to kind of fine tune it and get things to work together. And that's why I think boundaries are so important, man. I think they're sexy, man. I love it when a person tells me no. Tell me why you said no, right? I want to know. Listen, tell me, when a person wants to come, say they want to come on to work with me, and then they say no, I'm like, yeah, awesome, great no. Would you be open to sharing with me what the no is? What drives the no? And when they tell me, I'll be like, awesome, whatever the conversation gets into. But I love when people tell me no. I also love when people tell me yes. And I also ask, what drove you to say yes? Because that allows me to see where a person's output is. A person.
That's how you tell where it is. That's where you tell where it is. There's so much. It's so ambiguous, right? It's like, where is it? I love that. And asking for, getting it out of someone. That's great.
Yeah, man. I really ask. I'm into people. I'm into the way they move, the way they think, the way they talk, and I'm into their boundaries. And I think that boundaries are something to be explored in our world. I mean, look at what's going on right now with COVID and the mask situations. We are putting physiological boundaries on how we see each other, and we are being prevented, right? We're being prevented from seeing smiles. Right. And this is a huge part of or smiles or frowns, right? It's a challenge to communicate. We don't just communicate with sound. We communicate with language, with facial language and expression. And if a person is wearing a bunch of clothes and they take a deep breath, you can't see them really take a deep breath, right? Yeah. And so the more we put clothes on, the less we can see of a human's physiology, the less our bodies get to actually talk with each other from an unconscious perspective, right? From a subconscious or unconscious, however you like to present it, it's that perspective. And so now we have COVID and we have this. And we have people not being able to see the other bodies breathe. And so, or talk, or smile, or frown, or whatever, or do stuff like this.
It's interesting since you brought that up, like the boundaries, how boundaries are more broken now than ever. I mean, it's interesting the way people communicate. They're short with each other, right? It's almost this disconnect. There's a complete disconnect of that intimacy. It's more challenging to build rapport. Mask, no mask. Are you unsure? Do we touch? Do we shake hands? Do we hug? All these things, right? And it's like, it's definitely there's going to be some interesting things. It
is an interesting situation. I practiced nursing for 25 years in New York City, and my last 5 years, 5 or 6 years, I think, of nursing, maybe even 7. I stopped taking the flu shot. It was when H1N1, they came out with a vaccine so quick, and my colleagues started to have all of these symptoms and stuff. So I was like, I'm not taking the flu shot anymore. And that's my choice. And so they were like, you have to wear a mask if you don't take the flu shot. I was like, okay. So I would take the mask and I would draw a smile on the mask. and so when people would come in, they would see the smile and it would make them smile. They would smile immediately. They would like, what's going on? I was like, what's going on? And I would smile and I'm like, I'm smiling under here. How are you today? And it changes everything, man. It's so important for us to be able to have that communication space where our bodies see one another, man. Boundaries,
y'all.
You're talking about boundaries, man, and how sexy they are, and how and some boundaries, like those boundaries with masks, are not very sexy. I want to see a person smile, and so when I go into stores and stuff, I'm smiling all the time, and so when I say hi to people, they can hear it, right? Whenever I walk past another person,
you definitely feel it.
I say, hi, how are you? And I make sure that I have this mask that's kind of really tight on my face. This is a cloth mask thing that's tight on my face. Hi, how are you? And I make sure that my hat is out of the way or whatever so they can see my eyebrows.
Yeah.
And I start conversations with people from 6 feet away or however social distancing they are, or the cashier behind the plastic plexiglass situation. I'm doing my best to keep that rapport going and establish intimacy as much as possible, to keep people in a know that there is a possibility to still have this, even though there are these regulations that are in the way, that are giving us a physiological boundary that may not be by choice.
Absolutely. No, I love your boundaries. Like and I love how you communicate boundaries. That's why I wanted to talk to you more about this, because it's so important right now. And it's our unconscious, our unconscious mind, our subconscious, right? The beliefs, our attitudes, all of that it's a making of our environment, how we were raised. And if we really want to get better at our boundaries and actually enforcing them, or even, letting go of the beliefs that we have around them, that we can't say no, people pleasing, all these things that people do. These are really important issues, especially in business, because let's talk a minute about that. The client coach relationship, there's got to be some firm boundaries, and a lot of people don't go out and take action. So then all of a sudden the boundaries, they wonder why people are stepping over them, or they're stepping over their own boundaries. The way I see it, I like your more expanded, but I also look at it as like, hey, I'm going to draw the line, and this is where I'm not going to step over this. This is going to be the integrity of myself and where I draw the line. Yeah. Maybe it's in how much money you charge. Maybe it's, how you budget things, whatever that is. There is an integrity to that boundary, and it's kind of testing us. As soon as we install it, or as soon as we say, I'm going to say no, I'm going to do this, then all of a sudden the universe brings you that, that wonderful human being that tests that. And maybe it's yourself, maybe it's your internal, your internal dialogue. It's like, hey, I don't know if this is what I really want. I kind of like my expanded boundaries. This is too rigid. I'm going to go back to doing things the way I was. So with regards to business, man, my upstairs is hotter than hell.
Turn on that AC. Man, listen, close to the roof, man. We in Texas, bro.
It's on, but the damn AC got fixed today. I had to take my shirt off. Bro. I had to take my shirt off, because it's so damn hot in my house.
Could you imagine if you had your shirt on and be all sticky?
I would literally it would just be like pouring off me, which it already is, but
on fire. So boundaries with business. Yeah. I mean, in what context would you like me to talk about it? I mean, there's so much to having boundaries, and with rapport, with this back and forth situation, being able to establish a boundary for now. And as a person who is a guide or a leader or a coach, being able to detect if a person has boundaries that are expanded or contracted, or they're somewhere in the middle. And then if they don't have them, help establish them. Listen, I'm going to set limits. And if you see me go over those limits, I want you to let me know. If I say I'm going to only speak for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to let you speak, or I'm going to open up space for you to speak, not let you speak. Because again, that language it connotates that somebody is not in a sovereign space to speak when they want to.
Right.
So to be able to give a person space to speak, and if you see me move back and kind of test it, hey, listen, I was talking for 6 minutes and you didn't say anything. Did you notice that? And bring it up. And it's the same thing when you're looking to empower your staff, right, or your team. Hey, listen, I noticed this. I noticed XYZ. Can we work on this together? These are boundaries that I feel our team will benefit from. You being able to say no, you being able to be mindful of your time. When I was in nursing, we would go to work every day, and our boundaries would be ruptured, because we'd be working 12 hours with no break. And, people just wouldn't say anything. What am I going to do? And we would start to get frustrated and be like, look, I need to go on my break, or I'm not working. or you can, or I'm going to, I'm going to go get triage and I'm going to go home. And so we had to start setting boundaries. And so for a person who is a team leader to be able to say, okay, listen, I'm going to honor I'm going to honor these boundaries. I need you to let me know when they come up. I think it's really, really important, man. And being able to set boundaries and not just speak them out loud, but write them down. These are our boundaries. These are what we are going to adhere to. And if we want to change these, let's talk about it. Let's change it and understand that there are certain things that can be flexible and certain things that are going to be a little rigid. And that comes from the contraction space and the expansion space.
If you're watching the replay, we're talking about my good friend Tah Whitty. We're talking about boundaries.
They are sexy, man. They are sexy.
We decided to expand our boundaries and remove the shirts today.
They're off.
They're off. It's because I wanted it off. It was heavy.
Well, I was testing my mic and stuff, and I had no shirt on, and Brandon came on and he was like, "Oh, we're doing this shirtless." I was like, "Why not?" So here we are. And what better way to celebrate talking about boundaries than to remove clothes? And look, there are probably some people that were like, I can't see this, right? So their boundary or their conservative boundary might have stopped them. And then there's some people who are like, yeah, all right, and they're leaning. So where is your personal boundary with this kind of situation? And it's the same thing with dress codes, right? When you have certain office situations where people have to wear ties and all these are boundaries that the company has set that may make a person feel uncomfortable in their expression. People cannot express, when you have a shirt and a tie and a suit from here down, how much of your body language is actually being seen other than some flailing of your arms?
Right.
It's hard to see a person breathe. And these are things that are put on people that actually restricts them. And when you don't understand that clothing is an actual boundary that has been placed upon us by whoever decided that we need to wear clothes, not for protection from the environment. I'm in my house. I don't need to protect myself from any environment. What do I need? Why?
Society's doing that, though. You're going to see boundaries they already are, right? Because of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Corporations are coming down with even more strict boundaries. And there's going to be some things that they're really going to test people's boundaries when it comes to free will, what they're going to do. And guess what? If people are already pre-programmed and they're already getting this installed at the unconscious level because of everything that's going on, all this shit. And basically what's going to happen is they're going to be like, oh yeah, it's okay. I'm going to people please. I don't need to speak up. Why? If I say something and I get out of line, I'll just get smacked. And so it's literally, it's herd mentality. That's one thing that's like, it's interesting to see this happening. That's why I love being an entrepreneur, because I don't want people to tell me, don't corral my ass.
Seriously, man. I choose not to be. Say again.
I want to set the boundaries.
Yeah, but that's the thing, man. When we can meet in the middle and actually discuss things, that's where the creativity can expand, because everybody's nervous system is calm. So that's where the most creative spaces are. That's where the default mode network really kind of flourishes, when the body is really, really chill. And when the body is chill, that's where creative stuff comes up, man. It's really an awesome creative space when everybody is chill. And when we are not in a space of that rapport and that volley and that intimacy, then things can get rigid. And then people do things on the sly and on the slick and under the table. And that's with, their boundaries. They'll have boundaries with you, but in the background, they're doing stuff because that's where they feel free. They feel free when they're by themselves. So most of the time when people are alone, their boundaries, they can drop all of the habitual posturing. And posture is a physiological boundary that we create to present an identity to other people. And when we can let that boundary down and just be whoever we are at whatever time, the people who can actually connect with that will see that. And when you build a business around authenticity and being who you are, you will draw authentic people into your business, draw authentic clients who are inspired by your authenticity and your ability to drop that down and still hold your ground at the same time. Like, you can come chill with me and hang with me, and when it comes time to do business, you're not messing with me. You're not going to break me down. There's a space that I have built my own boundaries with myself. I was very loose with money. People could take money from me in a heartbeat before. And so since they were taking my money and they were kind of robbing me blind, I wasn't able to have the comforts that I wanted to have so that I could actually provide clients and people. Every time I do this, I'm wiping sweat off my back. I
face at this point.
I can't serve my clients if I'm not comfortable. So I had to really tune in to the boundaries that I had. I'm letting my money fly out the window to people who aren't really giving me service. They're really looking to take money from me. My money's pouring out of my pockets. So I'm frantic about paying bills. Things are late and all of this stuff. And I can't really show up for my clients and the people that I really want to uplift because I'm worried about something else. So I had to move into a space where money is a space that I don't play games with my money. I'm very cool about it, but it's like, no, yes, my yeses and nos really, they're really starting to tighten up. And I mean, it's still a game that I've been working on for a while. But if you saw me 10 years ago with my money, bro, it was just flying out the window. The woman that I was with, she would take my money and just spend it. It was ridiculous.
That was like Deb. When I got together with Deb, it was very similar. I mean, she had that kind of loot, like just spending money, made it, always had a lot of it laying around, usually cash, Mm-hmm. And when we got together, I was like, well, we need to like tighten in here. We need to rein this in. And I was very careless with money too, right before I met Deb. And I had just started that, like, bringing in some structure and really saying no to more people.
Yeah.
Especially to like when you're trying to run your business, you say yes to marketers, you say yes to anything that's like, oh, advertising, you can help me make more money. I'm on it. And I'm like, damn, I'm not making any more money, but I'm spending a shit ton, so that's something that we definitely, with our relationship, the way Deb and I kind of brought in money, it was we definitely had to get conscious of it. And it's good.
It's a boundary thing. Your outflow of money, right? Wait, it's flowing out. Put something in front of that, right? Put something in front of that. That's a boundary, right? A budget is a boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a boundary. So when you set a budget, the outflow, no, right? The influx right now. Now, when you bring in money in, that's another boundary too. If you start to bring in too much money at one time, then you have taxes and situations and all. So sometimes you got to kind of curb what you're doing, because you can have more money coming in than you can manage. Then you may not even be able to put out if you don't have a team, if you don't have manufacturers and all of this stuff to do this stuff. I've seen businesses crash because they do not know how to put a boundary on the incoming situation. They've opened the floodgates of telling people about stuff, and they have these wonderful advertising programs. And then when the orders and stuff come in, they can't match it because the boundaries are not met. So that's not very sexy when your business closes down because you don't have boundaries. So, we want to be sexy, right? We want to be sexy because sexy is creativity, right? That's what the creative life force. When we have sex, we create human beings. It's the most amazing creative thing that we can do. So sexy is creative. And when you can get
is money, sexy, it's the flow of money, it's prosperous.
It's the tantra, and it's the influx and the outgo. You have to spend money to get money. There's an in and out. If you are that person, if you're what's his name, Scrooge McDuck, right?
There's so many people that hoard money, and when they hoard it, they're just as miserable too. I mean, I had a really good client that kind of turned into like a mentor figure to me years ago in real estate, and he hoarded a lot of money. And when he passed away, unfortunately, he was not a happy person. His boundaries were so just strict and so inflexible, just not a flexible person when it came to it. He really couldn't get it out of his hand. He didn't even want to give it to his family. It's sad when that. I mean, it does the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some people's boundaries need a foam roller, bro. Get it in the end, loosen up the fascia a little bit, bro, and just let it loosen up, man. We've got to have that. Speaking of sexy, right? Tantra is what a lot of people connect with sexual energy, and Tantra is an ebb and a flow. It's the yin and the yang. It's the masculine and the feminine. There's a flow to it. So if you have an outgoing and no incoming, there's going to be a discrepancy. If you have an incoming and no outgoing, there's going to be a discrepancy. This is where boundaries come. So you have to be able to know where your comfortable limits are, so you can reel it back in and then you can switch it up and then expand back out. And then if you want to expand more, get some people to support you as you expand more, as you step into that space. This is one of the reasons why we have instructors. When I went skydiving last year, I'm just going to jump out this airplane and throw a parachute on me. No, I had an instructor because that's my boundary. My boundary is I'm not doing this without somebody with me because I don't know what I'm doing. So as I start to learn more, I expand my boundary into a courageous space where now I'm not doing a tandem, but they're jumping out the airplane with me and they have a helmet on, and I'm talking to them and they're telling me what to do and how to pull the ripcord and how to do all of this stuff. These are boundaries. And when you start to understand boundaries, we all have them. Where are your boundaries? Are they way out here? Or are they way in here?
That's a good point.
Say again?
That's a good point about building your team. But wait, finish what you were just going to say.
Yeah, no. Are they out here? Or are they in here? Or are they in the space in between? That's it.
Yeah. No, I building a team. That's one thing. You're a solopreneur. I know we're coaching and mentoring a lot of coaches right now that are building their businesses. And it's like at some point you can't do it all. You've got to expand that, and you've got to bring in help, and you've got to trust that whatever boundaries you put forward, policies, procedures, et cetera, put a process in place. Trust the boundary that they're going to actually be able to do what they need to do without having to micromanage or without, saying, okay, I might as well do this myself because I can do it faster. It's like, come on, give that up. That's wwhere you need expansion. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, man, to have that trust. And for me, one of for anybody that's a coach or anybody that's expanding business right now, it's really important when you are building a team to have boundaries around honesty. Okay. And when you speak about honesty, listen, I want you to be honest with me. That's a great space to say. However, honesty to everyone is not the same thing. So for you to be able to tell people what honesty is telling me this, it's divulging this, that. Are you in a space where you can be that open with me? Right? Because I want to be that open with you so that we can meet in the middle around the honesty. If you're not feeling well and you can't come to work or whatever, I need to know about it because you're important to me.
It's a great place to start. You got to start there and to define what honesty is, because honesty means something different to both
everybody.
Of all 15 people in the room, right?
Yeah, it means something different to everybody. And if you and so to take it back to what we were saying at the beginning, if you grew up and you had this rigid situation, honesty was just being honesty about what can be seen on top of the rigidity, maybe, right? And so, you may not be able to be honest about what's inside what you're holding, right? So, and then there's the people who are all over the place. They have this big space, and so what can they be honest about? They may pick and choose what they're honest about, right? So really starting to understand what people's honesty is and what their truths are, and validating all of their truths and their honesty so that they can actually come and talk to you when there's an issue. If they're afraid that if a person is afraid that they've done something that's off kilter or that's dysfunctional for your team or your company, and they may be ashamed, people have to deal with a lot of shame situations in their lives, and they may not be physiologically able to be honest completely because of shame. And so when you start to bring that into your business and start to understand the boundaries that people have around shame and honesty, that's when things can start to open up. So that is a marketplace. That is, for me, foundational. With anybody that's going to work with me, I need them to know what honesty is to me. I need them to know how I'm going to show up and how I am looking for them to show up. And I'm going to ask them if they are capable of showing up that way. And if they're not, it's okay, right? There's maybe another fit for you, but this isn't it. If you need help nurturing that, then let's nurture that. Let's build that into what the experience is of you working on this team. Let's support you in that space, because I'm not just about making money. I'm about my team being fortified, not just with finances from a paycheck, but as a human being, so that their life and their family are actually fortified in all ways, in all aspects. So this is where intimacy comes into play with your team. And I think it's a really important space to start with.
I love that. I'm writing the notes down because I was like, man, I'm going to run that by Deb.
Man.
No, I love it. Well, dude, I appreciate you jumping on. I love talking. I'm learning from you. I love you, man.
Absolutely. I love you so much, bro. so much. It's very mutual, my man.
And
So much love for you.
And if our women don't want to like hug us or touch us, you know, we can always get together and we can hug each other. We can
bring it in, my man. Bring it in, bro. Every time I see you, man, the hugs get better, man. I love it. I love it, and I love you, man. And I love every one of you who are watching this. Thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up and seeing two dudes sweat shirtless as we tell you about sexy boundaries and that boundaries provide limitless, boundless sexiness.
Put some comments in the section if you've got some boundaries that you're struggling with, or boundaries that you're like, hey, you know, maybe a win, maybe something you learned just by Tah and us talking about it, because Tah gave some gold here. And I really think a lot of people struggle with it. I think the more they get honest and vulnerable about those boundaries, they can really transform. So if you got a little aha, put it in the comments. We'd love to chat about it. So thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. I love you, brother. And man, I'm looking forward to more connection, more growth, whatever we can do together to expand this world and move into this new wave of human evolution. Feel free to check me out at tahcole.com, TAHKOLE.com. Cole and I are doing an amazing program called Rated R for people who have been rated as racist or are afraid of being rated as a racist, so that we can start to get you into a space where your body, your life, and your team are on board with you and your languaging around this everything that's going on in the world right now. Talk about that for a minute. Is that online? It will be online. We are launching on September 21st. And so we started putting, we're starting to take calls. We're going to be doing a group coaching situation with that. And we're going to be doing one-on-one high ticket stuff and corporate stuff. We're going to be going in and talking to people's teams around really, really realigning, and not just leaning into diversity, but leaning into inclusivity. And that includes intimacy. We need to talk about intimacy and in inclusion, because if you're trying to include people and we can't be intimate with conversation, there's not going to be a deep inclusion. And so it's not just about, oh yeah, I got a black guy that works at the reception desk, and I got a Latino person over here doing this, and I got an Asian person doing it. It's diverse here, but what are you including them in? Are you including them in mopping the floor? You know, what are you including people in? Are you including people in the culture of your business? And so it's really about getting people to start to understand what inclusivity is and bringing that into your business, bringing that into your team, into your corporation, and into your life, into your family life, and into your physical body. We're talking about how the nervous system gets, how racism and any other ism gets programmed into the nervous system. And it's not just about racism, it's about the overarching oppression of human beings. And that includes racism, sexism, ageism, classism, all the isms that keep people pushed down in any aspect. Racism is what's the vogue situation right now, and people are leaning into me because I'm this black guy with light skin, so I'm this anomaly. And so I've been discriminated against by darker folks and lighter folks. So I kind of have this mid-range situation that is a very unique space that I can talk about this stuff.
And I want to, I'll put your comment in because I loved your the webinar that you did for racism. That was awesome.
Oh yeah, the tahcole.com /racism. Oh, it was an awesome webinar.
We'll drop a link in it. That was great. I'm glad I got on that.
Thank you, man.
Man, I love you. And yeah, let's connect.
I love you. All right, man.
Let's keep it going. Thanks.
Peace.
See ya.